Parshas Pinchas. So let's start with something not in the Parsha. Last week there was an earthquake in Venezuela. As of this morning, as of yesterday, confirmed dead 1,430. It's probably a lot more than that. That's according to NBC News. One at least 1,400 and 3,360 injured. And, excuse me, close to 70,000 people missing. In other words, unaccounted for under rubble. Now, we're already 3-4 days into it. Who knows how many of those are going to survive? Please God, some do. The point is that an earthquake happens across the world. What does it mean to us? Chofetz Chaim said in 1923, there was an earthquake in Turkey-Syria region. And the Chofetz Chaim said, Parshas Yisro heard, the whole world heard, but in Parshas Yisro it says, Yisro heard, and then Yisro came. And he came to join the Jewish people. The entire world heard what was going on. What did Yisro hear? He heard the war with Amalek and the splitting of the sea. In the reverse order. Splitting of the sea and the war of Amalek. And that caused him to act. Chofetz Chaim says, when we hear something across the world, we need to act. That's the message of an earthquake across the world. When something happens, when something in the world happens, even if we're not related to it in any way, shape, or form, we still need to say, there's some kind of message in that for me. What can I do about it? And every person needs to work it out for themselves, what they can do about it. Because each person knows where they are holding. But the Chofetz Chaim was very, very, I want to say, ingenious in terms of his way he interpreted life. He was part of the Musa movement. He was the leading rabbi, turn of the last century, late 1800s through to 1933 when he died. We've discussed previously, a few weeks ago, we had a little bit of a discussion after Shir about the Holocaust. He was one of those rabbis at the time who told people to get their act into gear because he could see it was coming. He died. He was spared. He was in his 90s already, but he was spared. He died 6 years before the Shoah started. He could see exactly what was going on. And there must be some message in it for each of us. When we hear something, do we act? How do we act and what do we do about it? And that's really what the message of at least the beginning of this week's Parsha is about. The Parsha starts off, Parshas Pinchas, as it says there, 168 verses, there's 6 positive mitzvahs. It's a straddling Parsha. It's almost at the end of the book of Bamidbar. We've got, this week is Pinchas, next week we have the double Parsha of Matos and Maseh, which ends Sefer Bamidbar, and that is very much the longest Parsha in the year. When the two of them are together, 244 verses as far as I recall. But it's the verse, the Parsha that's read almost always in the 3 weeks. The Haftarah of Parshas Pinchas itself is almost never read. I don't know if we're going to get to discuss the Haftarahs and much about the 3 weeks. We'll see how we go. We've got a lot to discuss just in the Parsha, and essentially the focus is really going to be on the beginning of the Parsha. We will discuss the rest of the Parsha, but the focus today is really on what was the story of Pinchas. V'adaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Hashem says to Moshe, saying, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen, Heshiv es chamasi me'el b'nei Yisrael, v'kanai es kanoisi b'seichem, v'lo kalisi es b'nei Yisrael b'kinasi. Long verse. Pinchas, who was the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen, Moshe says, Hashem told Moshe that he turned back my wrath from upon the children of Israel when he zealously avenged my vengeance amongst them. I did not consume the children of Israel in my vengeance, Hashem said. Lots of vengeance going on there. Last week's Parsha ended with the story of Pinchas killing 2 people. Parsha doesn't tell us who they were. Parsha ended last week saying that a man of the children of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman near to his brothers before the eyes of Moshe, before the eyes of this high assembly of the children of Israel. They were weeping at the entrance center meeting. Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron HaKohen, saw. He stood up from amidst the assembly, took a spear in his hand. He followed the Israelite man into the tent, pierced them both, the Israelite man and the woman, into her stomach. And the plague was halted, and 24,000 people died. End of story. It's very, very, very rare. Almost never happens that we have a parsha that ends, and the next parsha is a continuation of the exact same story, because now it's telling us, oh, by the way, Pinchas took vengeance on my behalf, says Hashem. Therefore, therefore, I'm going to give him a covenant of peace. And then all his offspring are going to become Kohanim after that, because he took vengeance for Hashem and he atoned for the children of Israel. And then the Torah says, oh, by the way, it doesn't say by the way. B'Shem Ish Yisrael, the name of the Jewish man who was slain with the Midianite woman was Zimri ben Salu. He was a Nasi Beis Av Lishimoni, the prince of his father's house from the tribe of Shimon. And the Shem Ha'isha Hamuka, the name of the slain woman, was a Midianite. Her name was Cosbi bas Tzur, and she was a daughter of Tzur, who was Rosh Amos Beis Av Midianu. Her father was the head of the peoples of the father's house in Midian. He was one of what we learn is the 5 princes of Midian. So we've got the head of a tribe with a princess of another country who had done something wrong. They had a relationship, and Pinchas, who is Moshe Rabbeinu's brother's grandson, great nephew, comes along and kills them. And what does Pinchas get as a reward? He becomes a Kohen. We've got Aaron, Eleazar, Pinchas. Surely Pinchas the Kohen is the son of a Kohen. No, because when there's a dispute in the Gemara, but the Gemara brings when Kahuna was given initially, it was given to Aaron and his sons, and any children that were born after that. Any children that were born at that point in time were not Kohanim, were not included as Kohanim. So Pinchas was not included as a Kohen. Because of this act of zealotry that Pinchas performed, he became a Kohen. And Hashem describes a Kohen as somebody who's got Risi Shalom, covenant of peace. We know that we end Bekas Kohanim with Shalom. We end everything with Shalom. We end benching with Shalom. We end Shemona Esra, the last blessing in davening every day, 3 times a day, is Shalom. Shabbos, Yom Tov, 4 times a day. We'll come back to that afterwards. Yom Tov Shabbos. And so Aaron HaKohen, when he died in last week's Parsha, it says about Aaron that Aaron was the person, not a person. He was the prime person who was Ohev Shalom V'Rodav. Ohev Shalom V'Rodav Shalom. He loved peace and he chased after peace. That was what being a Kohen was about. And here is Pinchas takes a spear and he kills a leader of the Jewish people and a foreign princess in the name of peace, and he gets an eternal covenant of peace. It's quite a challenging thing to understand. Okay, we'll get there. Okay, so before we get there, let's start with our poem. Pinchas slew Zimri, his zeal turned the tide. The tribes are all counted before holy lands divide. Slavchad's daughters won land in his name, and Musaf offerings mark each festival flame. Okay, that's the little drawing. That's really the whole Parsha. On that page, you can see we've got Pinchas killing Zimri and Cosbi. We've got the tribes being counted. We've got the daughters of Slavchad, and we'll come back to all of this at the end, coming to Moshe Rabbeinu and saying, we would like to inherit land. And the laws of inheritance are learned out from that. And then we have the Musaf offerings. It's just a depiction of a Kohen Gadol doing an offering here, but we will come back to the offerings. And it's really about the division of the land of Israel. That's really our Parsha in a nutshell. Thanks again to Notebook LM, because these charts were designed by Notebook LM with a few tweaks by me. I put the information in and it came up with this as our theme, and I like the theme, so we'll use it. So Pinchas, as we said, his zealotry was rewarded. He got an eternal covenant of priesthood. And then the end of Rishon, just to go through that quickly, says, okay, with Pinchas ends off, killed them, the plague ended, and we learned last week 24,000 people died. And then Hashem says to Eleazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, because remember last week Aaron had died, now Eleazar has taken over as Kohen Gadol. Hashem says to Moshe and to Eleazar to count the Jewish people. That's the end of Rishon, and Shani discusses the count. I'll come back to that. What I would like to do is look at a Gemara, which describes. I just need to turn my phone off. There is a Gemara in Sanhedrin, which I'm going to go through in a little bit of detail and just bring some other points about that, which gives some background to what Pinchas did. The Gemara is in Sanhedrin on page 81b, 82a. It goes all the way through to 82b. It starts off with a Mishnah in bottom of 81b, which talks about somebody who steals or blasphemes by natural forces or who cohabits with an Aramean woman. Let's see what the note here says. Any idolatrous woman, a Jewish person who cohabits with an idolater, and this is where it starts coming into discussion. The Mishnah there says, "K'naim pogim boy, let's make it." Somebody who, there's a whole, it's not just that if you hear about somebody doing something wrong, you can go and kill them. There's a whole range of very, very specific halachas that apply, which means that it's almost impossible, if not impossible, for a zealot to kill him. But the Gemara is teaching us, or the Mishnah is teaching us here something a little bit in the background, that something we should not do. It is so bad that if they were caught by a zealot and everything happened in the exact right order, then you have the right to kill the person. The chances of that are close to zero. Not zero, because Pinchas did actually kill Cosbi and Zimri and Cosbi. And so the Gemara then discusses various different things, and says, I will jump to the part about Pinchas. It gives a whole, almost a page of discussion about what that means specifically. And then right near the bottom of the page, it says, Ma Ra'ah, what did he see? Now remember, we started off with the Chofetz Chaim said with an earthquake, he saw something. Yisro, the Chofetz Chaim quoting Yisro, Yisro saw. What did Yisro see? Yisro saw splitting of the Red Sea, the battle with Amalek, where Moshe raised his arms up, and Amalek had attacked us. Every time his arms were raised, Jewish people were victorious. As soon as he dropped his arms, they were losing the battle. And we learned that out a few weeks ago in relation to the copper snake that he put up. When you look up, you get inspiration from Hashem. So Yisro looked up and he saw, oh, Hashem is helping the Jewish people, I need to join them. Pinchas now saw something. So Rav says he saw this incident with Zimri and Cosbi, and he remembered the ruling. He remembered, oh, Moshe Rabbeinu had taught us something. So Pinchas comes to Moshe, and we'll go through the background of exactly what happened, but maybe I should go a little bit back here, actually. Let's carry on from here. I'll tell the story from there. So Pinchas comes to Moshe and he says, Avi Abba Loi Chach, brother of my father's father. In other words, great uncle. Didn't you teach us when you came down from Har Sinai that somebody who cohabits with a kuti, a non-Jewish woman, zealots may kill him? Moshe says to him, this is Moshe's response, let the one who reads the letter be the agent. You've read it. To some degree, Moshe has, and all of the Jewish people has brought down their opinions that say that everybody had forgotten this law. And Pinchas was the one who remembered it. And Moshe said to Pinchas, You've brought this to my attention. You know it to take action. And Pinchas went in. The various different interpretations of what that all means. Then Pinchas goes and he removed the metal tip of his spear and he placed it in his garment and he went leaning on his walking stick. So his spear became a walking stick and he reached the encampment of Shimon. I'm going to go through a whole lot of background in a minute about what this all means. Once he reached Shimon, he said, where do we find that the tribe of Levi is morally greater than the tribe of Shimon? And they heard this and they thought, oh, he wants to get involved in our little thing that's going on. And so they let him in because they said he's also entering to satisfy his physical needs. He's got a desire. He needs to be with these women. So let's go back to last week's Parsha. In last week's Parsha, Bilam was trying to curse the Jewish people. And each time he came along to curse the Jewish people, Hashem changed his words and made it into a blessing. Bilam left Balak and he said to him, there's one way you can capture the Jews. One way that the Jews will fall for it. And that is through adultery. Because the men will not be able to hold themselves back if you present some beautiful Midianite women to entice them. And the Jewish people went along and they were sucked in, a whole group of them were sucked into this fair. It was a Midianite fair, and they had women sitting outside tents inviting people in. And inside the tent there was idol worship, and there were beautiful young girls, and they were all ready to have relations with the Jewish men and cause the men to sacrifice to the idols. Interestingly enough, one of the idols is called Baal Peor. The way of serving that idol was to defecate in front of the idol, believe it or not. And people succumb to this. Now, in our minds, it just does not make sense. But that's what was happening. That's how you serve that idol. And so one of the women who was there, I'm just skimming through the Gemara, I'm just reading through bits of it, was this woman called Cosbi. Her father had said to her, you go and suck in, if I can use that term, the leader of the Jewish people. And her goal was to get Moshe Rabbeinu. And she comes to Jewish people, and the tribe of Shimon, who are now being pulled into this idol worship, this adultery, come along and say, no, hang on, our leader, Zimri, is just as good as Moshe. In fact, he was one of the greatest leaders of the Jewish people. There's this midrash that brings down that he was 150 years old at the time. And he proved to her that he was as good as Moshe. Now, we have to have some more background, because Moshe himself was married to a Midianite. Zipporah was the daughter of Yisro, who was from Midian. And so they were foreigners. And so now Pinchas comes along and he's about to slay, or he does slay, and they say to him, why are you better than us? What have you done? You are also connected, because they called him Ben Putti, because his father was married to a sister of Zipporah, one of Yisro's other daughters. And so we've got this thing that Moshe was kind of stumped when Zimri came to Moshe and said, listen, I'm here. You're also married to a foreigner. What's better than you? Why can't I take her? And Moshe didn't answer. There's a little message in that to all of us, that we don't always need to answer threats against us. When people accuse you of things, you don't always need to answer back. Sometimes better, most times better to keep quiet. You have to apologize, grovel, maybe, but don't necessarily answer back. Talk from personal experience. Because answering back just creates a machlaikas. And if you don't need to go down that way, yes, if you've done something wrong, apologize, but there's no need to argue and argue and argue. And so Moshe refused to argue. Moshe had so many arguments. He could have quite easily said, yeah, but I married her before the Torah was given. She converted. It was all kosher v'yosher. It was perfectly under everything, perfect. No problem whatsoever. You here are doing something completely against the Torah. Moshe was quiet. Needed Pinchas' zealotry. Now, the problem we have with all of this is that the way the Torah describes the interaction in last week's Parsha, and again in this week's Parsha, it says, behold, a man of the children of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman near his brothers in the sight of Moshe. That's describing where Zimri is coming to Moshe and putting this whole story to him. Again, in this week's Parsha, it says, the name of the slain Israelite man who was slain with the Midianite woman was Zimri ben Solu, the leader of Shimon. Why did it call him an Israelite, a Jew, a Bnei Israel? Why did it not call him from the tribe of Shimon? He was the leader. It should have called him tribe of Shimon straight away. We go all the way back to when Yaakov and his 11 sons at that time were coming back to Israel. They came to a place called Shechem, and Yaakov's daughter Dinah was violated. And Shimon and Levi, the two brothers, number 2 and number 3, Reuben, Shimon, Levi. So Shimon and Levi, who were 12, 13 years at the time, took it upon themselves to slay this whole town. They killed Hamor, they killed Shechem, and they wiped out the town. When they came down to Egypt, now they sell Yosef to Egypt. And Yosef is standing there, and he sees these brothers, and he knows if Shimon and Levi get together, they can wipe out the entire country of Egypt. They will kill him, no problem whatsoever. He locked Shimon in jail. Shimon and Levi get together. It is a recipe for disaster. It's also a recipe for incredible success because from a Torah side of things, they are extremely learned and can learn and grow and whatever. But in this perspective, if there is some kind of negative force, these two together can wipe out pretty much anything they like. And so, interestingly enough, Shimon in Parshas, we go back into Bereshis, Parshas Vayeshev, in Parshas Miketz ends, the brothers come down to Egypt, they bow down to him and they go back. That's the backwards and forwards between coming from the land of Canaan down to Egypt. And then Shimon is arrested. Then they come back again. So Yosef keeps Shimon with him. The brothers come back again. Binyamin is accused of stealing Yosef's cup. It's put in his sack. They come back, and the story is left mid-air there. In fact, just interesting, the very last verse of Parshat Miketz says, it uses the word shalom there as well. He replied, it would be sacrilegious for me to do this. The brothers want to send Binyamin back. Yehuda wants to stay. And Yosef says, it would be sacrilegious for me to do this. To the man in whose goblet was found, only he'll be my slave. The rest of you, alo shalom, go in peace. El avichem, to your father. So that he's telling them there, go in peace. But that story just ends. Because Parshas Vayigash is the next second, Vayigash elav Yehuda, Yehuda approaches them. And so we've got this similar kind of situation. We've got a split Parsha with the story just continuing straight, which I just kind of was picking that up when I was just doing a little bit of preparation last night. At the end of Parshas, of Sefer Bereshis, when in Parshas Vayechi, when Yaakov is blessing his children, he starts off with Yehuda and with Reuven, and he says, Reuven, you're my strength, my initial vigor, foremost in rank, you're the number one, but you're impetuous. You cannot be the leader, you can't be the foremost one, because you mounted your father's bed. That was the story where Reuven moved his father's bed to his mother's tent. You desecrate my couch. That's not a blessing. That's like Yaakov is telling Reuven off. And then he comes along and he says, Shimon v'Levi achim, kleim chamas micherosehem. Shimon and Levi, you're comrades in arms. You're brothers. You get together. And what is it? Weaponry is your stolen craft. You are people of the sword. You are very, very dangerous. In your conspiracy, may my soul not enter. And from that we learn out with Korach. With Korach a few weeks ago, it says there, Korach was the son of Levi. Great answer. It goes through Korach ben Yitzhak ben Cosbi ben Levi. It doesn't go the next generation to Yaakov. It stops there because Yaakov says, I don't want to be involved with that. I know Korach's coming. I can see through prophecy that Korach is going to be negative. But Korach is called Ben Levi. In our Pasha, Pinchas is just called Ben Aaron HaKohen. Doesn't go the next 2-3 generations back to Levi and to Yaakov as well. Because Korach was about Brisi Shalom. He was about bringing peace. Not Korach, sorry, excuse me. Korach was completely the opposite. Pinchas was about peace. Pinchas was wanted to bring peace to Jewish people. And so he came along. The people of the tribe of Shimon and Levi needed to be separate. And they came to Pinchas, and they say to him, after Pinchas killed Zimri, the other tribes started mocking him, particularly Shimon. He says, don't you see the son of Putti? They called him Putti. Your mother's father tended calves for idol worship. His name was Putiel. One of Yisro's names is Putiel. And that means he fattened calves so that there could be idol worshippers. You're just a grandson of an idol worshipper. And that's why the Torah calls him Ben Elazar Ben Aaron HaKohen. It didn't need to go to Aaron, but it says, oh, hang on, we're giving you that title of Brisi Shalom, of peace, because you're actually Elazar, the son of Aaron, or son of Elazar, the son of Aaron. And furthermore, Hashem said to Moshe that he gives him this Brisi Shalom, this covenant of peace. And Pinchas was able to stop that by killing the two of them. He, as we said in the Gemara earlier, he hid his spear in his cloak. He went in under the guise that he was joining in their conspiracy, because Shimon and Levi getting together, this is like phenomenal. And he went in and he slew Zimri and Cosbi with one spear straight between the two of them, which is what we had depicted in the top left corner there. And so this Gemara goes through and ends off and just discusses who these people were, and that Pinchas did the right thing. There's times in life when zealotry is needed, and there's most times in life when zealotry is not needed. And we need to be very careful to work out what the difference. When we come to the destruction of the temple, particularly the second temple, and that's really what the 3 weeks starting on Thursday is all about, is that there were groups in Jerusalem. There were the rabbis, essentially, and the people who were saying, no, we need to just appease the Romans and just keep going and do what Hashem wants us to do. And then there were other groups of zealots, Gemara describes, who burnt down the storehouses to create and force a war that the people in Jerusalem would have to go out and battle against the Roman army, the strongest army in the world. And we see this all the time. We just don't always know where to put our faith, where to focus on. What do we do? We've seen this, in cases where people take it upon themselves to kill an Israeli prime minister, for example. That is completely unfounded. It's got no basis whatsoever. When we seeing it, and now unfortunately where people are having all these protests and demonstrations and various other things to, yes, it's not necessarily the best way of doing things. The best way is always diplomacy. The best way is always focusing on what can I do better. If I improve myself, then Hashem's going to give me the Bris Ikuna, this covenant of peace, that I will be seen as a person who does the right thing, and people will want to deal with me. Right now, just on a side point with this wonderful memorandum of understanding, that's no understanding whatsoever. It's just unbelievable how you've got two sides who say completely the opposite things, having walked out of a meeting where they agreed with each other. But yes, I have heard that from a number of people we discussed a few times. This agreement really is just kicking the can down the road. And as we saw on the weekend, there were skirmishes again, another talking again. It will last another few days. The best thing is Israel's been very quiet, doing what they need to do in the background, not making a noise. That's the best way we can be. Be quiet, do what we have to do, don't say anything, and that's really what we need to do. That's what zealotry really is about. It's not about going in and killing. If you have to, well, then you do it. But it doesn't need to be a public display that the whole world can then jump down our throats, because we know that they do. Okay, that was Rishon, or most of Rishon. As we said, the end of Rishon is the command to count the Jewish people again. This is Sefer Bamidbar in the desert, but Chazal called this Sefer HaPekudim, the book of countings, because we are counted at the beginning of the book, and here we are right near the end of the book, and we are counted. We have a new census, and the total comes out at 601,730 people. Almost the same number. We're at 603,550, as far as I recall, in the earlier count. So a couple of thousand less. But remember, we are now 38 years later. And the entire generation that were around with the spies has died out. All the men who are counted are now gone. And so the Torah goes through each of the each family. So we'll just look. Moshe tells Eleazar in the plains of Moab by the Jordan, count the men from 20 years of age and up. Hashem commanded Moshe, the children of Israel who were counted out, who were coming out of the land of Egypt. So they were told to count men from 20 years of age and up. And then it says, just for Reuven Bechor Yisrael, Reuven is the firstborn of Israel. Bnei Reuven, the sons of Reuven, Chanoch Mishpachas Chanochi. Chanoch, I'll just read the English, the Hezronite family. The Falu Mishpachas Paoli. Palu, the Palat family. Chetzron, the Chetzronite family. Carmi, the Carmite family. And then it says these are the tribes of the families of Reuven. The count was 43,730. And then it says tribe of and then it says the tribe of sons of Eliav, and mentions them. Dasan and Aviram were summoned by the assembly. Talks about with Korach's rebellion. With Korach, the Torah brings in that they were with Korach there, and it tells us there. This is how we know. We spoke about when Korach died that his children didn't die and they were able to climb out of the hole in the ground. It tells us right there. And by the way, the sons of Korach didn't die. This is where it's told directly. We learned about it earlier, but this is the actual source. Then it says sons of Shimon, and it names the Shimonite families. And each of the families named, it says the person's name, and then it says Hakarmi, Lekarmi, Mishpachas Hakarmi, a Hey and a Yud. Every one of them gets Hashem's name, the Yud and the Hey added to their name, to show that these people were all connected to Hashem. Every one of them that gets to this point in time, every family, every Jewish person counts as a person connected to Hashem. And goes through and lists each of the tribes. We have the chapter starts, chapter 26 is the command, and then we get to Sheni where it actually starts the count in verse 5, and it goes all the way through to 51 verses of countings, where it tells us that there were 601,730 Jewish people counted.
Are those men only?
Men over the age of 20, yes.
Not the rest.
So no, so we approximate that it's probably about 3 to 4 million people in total. But it's essentially a count of those people who are able to go to war. And then at Shlishi, the Leviim are counted. Firstly, we're told to divide the land. The land is divided by inheritance according to the numbers of the tribes. It was done by a lottery, but depending on the size of the tribe was the size of their land that they received. This changed slightly next week because Reuven and Gad come and ask for more land. Or not so much more land, but they asked to stay on the east side of the Jordan because they had these mega flocks. That's later on. But this land is going to be, Hashem tells us that we need to divide the land by a lottery. do a lottery to divide the land. Depending on the size of the tribe, will be how much land that tribe gets. Which is interesting because it's obviously a divinely orchestrated lottery, because I'm just pulling a name out of a hat and an area out of a hat. If it was random, it's not going to be by size of the tribe. Then, just a little bit after we're told how to divide the land, we're told, okay, now count the Levium. So Levi is not counted in 12 tribes. Remember, there's two ways of looking at the Jewish people. The 12 sons of Yaakov, including Yosef and Levi, or 10 sons, and Yosef is split between Ephraim and Manasseh, his two sons. As grandsons of Yaakov, they were told, Yaakov blesses them, that they will be counted like sons. And so therefore we count Ephraim and Manasseh in the count, and then Levi is counted separately. So in Shlishi, Levi is counted by family again. Gershon, the Gershonite family, Kahas, the Kahas family, Merari family. It tells us that it just mentions them, and then it tells us, Amram took Yocheved, who was a daughter of Levi, as a wife, and she bore to Amram, Aaron, and Moshe, and Miriam. And Aaron had Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. Nadav and Avihu died when they brought a strange fire for Hashem. And the counts of the Leviim were 23,000, every male from 1 month. Because the Leviim served in the Mishkan, they were counted from 30 days, not from 20 years. That Leviim did not go out to war. The Leviim were the ones that worked in the Mishkan, that sat and learned Torah, model for the yeshivas, people learning Torah and not going into battle, as in carrying arms, but carrying the arms of Torah. Not going into that political discussion now. And then it tells us that Elazar counted everybody, and it tells us that only Kalev ben Yefuneh and Yeshua ben Nun survived of all the men that died out in the last 38 years. Note I say it was the men because the women didn't die out at age 60 like the men did. They died of natural causes normally because they were not involved in those episodes. We then come to the famous story of the grievance of the daughters of Tzlachad. I usually ask a riddle. I've asked this many times. Who was the father of the daughters of Tzlachad? And people think, but you can work it out. I've already given you the answer. So Tzlachad, they come along. There was this man called Tzlachad. The Torah names his daughters. It names Tzlachad. It says the daughter of Tzlachad, the son of Chefer, the son of Gilad, the son of Machir, the son of Menashe, from the families of Menashe, son of Yosef. Going all the way back to Yosef. It's a great-great-great-grandchild of Yosef. He came out of Egypt. His daughters' names were Machla, Noah, Chogla, Milka, and Tzirza. And they stood before Moshe, before Elazar Kohen, and before the leaders of the entire assembly at the entrance center meeting, and they said, our father Tzlachad died in the wilderness. But he died because he didn't die because of Korach. He wasn't involved with Korach. Said he died, he did his own wrong thing. And it's brought down there that he was the person who gathered the wood. So he had died. He loved the land of Israel. He wanted to protect Shabbos. We're looking at him in a positive light. What he did was wrong, but he was trying to do the right thing. He had no sons. He only had us 5 daughters. You've told us about inheritance now. You've just told us that the land is going to be inherited through fathers' families. Our father's going to miss out. Our father was a firstborn. So he was going to get a double portion because he's going to get the firstborn portion and his own portion. And that typically works if a person's got 2 sons. You divide the estate by 3. The firstborn gets 2/3 and the secondborn gets 1/3. And similarly with 4, 5, 6, however many sons a person has. It says, we're going to miss out completely. This is one of those times where Moshe said, I need to speak to Hashem. Hashem needs to tell me the halacha. And Hashem tells Moshe, we're now at Revi, this is how inheritance works. If you have a son or sons, their sons inherit and daughters don't inherit. Because effectively in Torah times, daughters got married and they were with their husband, and the husband inherited from his family. There is a way halachically of setting up a will that you can set it up that you can give money to whomever you choose. There's a proper halachic way of doing it. It's done in the person's lifetime, just sometimes say like a moment before death, I bequeath everything. There's a few different halachic ways of doing it. But in pure Torah law, if somebody dies, again, doesn't necessarily work in a Western country where we've got laws of succession. If there's no will, you follow the statute. But in a Torah way, if a person dies with sons and daughters, the sons inherit. The daughters are young; they're still subject to being cared for. The wife does not inherit the husband. The wife receives either she continues to live in the way that she's accustomed to, and the estate keeps her in that way, or she can receive her kasuba. So the kasuba is given as a guarantee to the woman that she will either get, if the marriage ends either in death or in divorce, she will receive her kasuba if she chooses to in terms of death. In terms of divorce, that's her divorce settlement. Now, we don't follow that in our times again because we generally have some kind of mediation, or unfortunately, the lawyers win and the courts goes to court. But in the straight, simple Torah law, that's how it would work. That the wife would be supported for the rest of her life, or until she gets married. If she remarries, then she'll get a ksuba and she moves on. And so sons inherit. If there are no sons, then daughters inherit. And it's just a straight inheritance. There's no double portion for a firstborn daughter. It's just a straight, however many daughters there are. If there are no children whatsoever, then it goes through the person who's passed away, his brothers, his father's brothers, goes up a generation, down a generation, depending on how far back you have to go, until you get to the nearest living relative, and that's the person who would inherit. There's always going to be a person to inherit. Interestingly enough, if a person converts and doesn't have any family, just as a person converts and they don't get married, they're single their whole life. When they die, according to pure halacha, again, this is pure halacha, it's not necessarily the way things would work in the Western world, but that person's assets become hefker, they become ownerless, and anybody can come and take them because he has no relatives. Because
even his non-Jewish family.
That's what I'm saying, according to pure halacha. Because when a person converts, he no longer is halachically related to his non-Jewish family. He's still obviously biologically related. But from a halachic perspective, he's a complete new neshama. He's a newborn child. He, she, being, using he just generically. But a person who converts is a newborn. They get a brand new neshama when they convert. And therefore, for example, let's just say a couple converts together, a married couple, they're living as non-Jews and they convert, the two of them. They have to get married now halachically because they are newborns to each other. Any children they had previously have to convert as well. Well, if they want to convert, will convert as well. And technically, halachically, they're not actually their halachic children. Now, they would be treated as children in every respect of the word, but from a pure Torah straight line, they are not their halachic children. They obviously are their children. But it's just interesting. There's slight little nuances as we look into each thing. But again, every case needs to be looked at in itself. It's not something, every single thing. But the laws of inheritance are learned out from the daughters of Safra. Fair enough. And where there's a will, there's a relative.
That's always.
Okay. And so now. No, there's a relative. While that's where we learn out the laws of inheritance from, and it's an important thing that we get it right in our lifetimes. Hashem then says to Moshe, you've been told you are not going into the land, and but you're going to see the land. And Moshe is taken up to Har of Arim, and he ascends the mountain, and he's able to see over the whole land. So it's just like Aaron was gathered in, you're going to be gathered in. Why? Because you rebelled against my words. That was the straw that broke the back. When Miriam died, the water stopped from the well, from the rock, and Moshe hit the rock. Various other reasons given, but because of that, you're not going into the land, Moshe. And Moshe then says, but Hashem, who's going to look after your children? I'm not here. I need a successor. Moshe was hoping his children would be appointed. Hashem says, you need to take Yeshua. Yeshua has been your student since he was a young boy. Yeshua was the person who would set up the base medrash every morning. Moshe would come down and teach the people. Yeshua was the one who'd gone in early and set up all the chairs for everybody in our times, and made the coffee, and he was the one who got everything ready, and he was the one who cleaned up afterwards. He was Moshe's right-hand man. Hashem says, no. Some of your greatness, your majesty, is now going to be passed on to Yeshua. And Moshe did as Hashem commanded. He took Yeshua, stood him before Elazar HaKohen, and before all of the Jewish people to show that the leadership was being transferred. Moshe did smicha. He laid his hands on Yeshua and told him exactly what Hashem had said. And that's where we learn out that Moshe got the Masorah from Hashem, first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and he passed it on to Yeshua. That's smicha. He gave smicha to Yeshua. Yeshua is now the rabbi of the Jewish people, the leader of the Jewish people. And then the Torah jumps. And the rest of the Parsha, except for this little bit of an introduction, Chamishi, is about the Musaf offerings that we bring on Yom Tov, on Shabbos, on Rosh Chodesh, and on Yom Tov. But it's all about the Musaf offerings. But it starts off, Vayedaber Hashem Moshe Leimot Tzav Es Bnei Yisrael, command the Jewish people, Amata Alehem, and say to them, Es Kovani Lachmi Liisharech Dichachi Tishmur Lakriv Li B'Madai. My offering, the food of my fires, that gives me a satisfying aroma, says Hashem. Be scrupulous to offer it in its right time. This is what you should offer. Vamatale, he said to them, you should offer to Hashem male lambs in the first year, unblemished, 2 a day, 2 lambs a day as a continual elevation offering, 1 lamb in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. And you should bring 1/10 of an ephah, a measure of flour. Fine flour is a meal offering mixed with a 1/4 of an amount of crushed olive oil. It's a continual offering, that was done at Mount Sinai. This was commanded at Mount Sinai. The first time we brought the korban tamid, the daily offering, tamid meaning day after day after day. In fact, interestingly enough, the Shulchan Aruch opens with tamid. You always put Hashem before you, and it ends with tamid to show us that we should be consistent. Consistency in life. That's the message of the korban tamid. The interesting question is, why is korban tamid being brought here? Because this is a parsha of Musaf offerings. We're going to go into the Musaf offerings. We'll describe them in a moment. I'm just trying to see here. I can't see it right now, but it's brought down. Rabbi Gladstein brought down, I heard in a brief share yesterday, that, and I just can't see the words right now, but a moed is, we call the moedim or Yom Tov. A moed is a meeting time. Korban tamid, it used the word b'moedo, here it is. Tishmei lakriv li b'moedo, at its appointed time. It's part of the whole structure of moedim, of Yomim Tovim. It's something that we need to do. Everything happens in a specific time. There's a time for everything. Shlomo Melech brings a time to live and a time to die, etc., etc. Everything has a time. And there is a time for the korban tamid every single morning and every single afternoon. Day in, day out. Shabbos, Yom Tov, you always bring the korban tamid. And in fact, when we talk about the Musaf offerings, it says you'll bring it with the tamid offering and then the Musaf offering. And so our tefillahs, Shachris, we know Shachris was instituted. There's a dispute in the Gemara, why do we have Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv? One opinion says Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov brought them. Avram davened Shachris because it says Avram got up early in the morning. Yashkem Avram Babayka. Yitzchak introduced us to Mincha because Yitzchak was out in the field contemplating, praying. When Rachel came to meet him, he was in the field davening. That was mincha time in the afternoon. And that's the korban tamid of the morning and the afternoon. And so the other opinion is, it's actually, and Yaakov brought us Mariv because Yaakov lay down to daven at night. And so the one opinion says Yitzhak, Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. The other opinion says, no, it's the times of the offerings. The offerings are while we daven. But both opinions work because we both can sit parallel to each other. But the times that we learn out for the korban tamid in the morning and the afternoon is the times when we should be davening mincha, shachris, and mincha, and mariv later on, because there's no mariv offering. We're not allowed to bring offerings at night, but it's at the point in time when they bring the leftovers and they put them on the fire. That point in time, when we say the nighttime Shema, that's the time for mariv. And so each of the offerings has a specific time. Just like when we daven, everything should be at the specific time. The latest time to say Shema. Everything we do is governed by a clock. We have a fast day on Thursday morning. In Melbourne, the fast starts at 6:24 a.m., which is kind of the latest fast we have in the year. The earliest finished when the latest starts. It's very much the shortest fast. Okay, then the Pasha goes on and discusses the Shabbos Musaf offering. Musaf meaning additional. Bring an extra offering on the Shabbos. That is why we have on Shabbos a Tefillas Musaf. We had an extra prayer of Musaf. It's only on days where we bring a Musaf offering that we would have a extra Tefillah. So it says, Yom HaShabbos, Shnei Kvasi, you should bring 2 male lambs in the first year. They should be Tamimim. They should be perfect, unblemished. And some flour of the meal offering mixed with oil, and the elevation offering of each Shabbos on its Shabbos, in addition to the daily offering, as well as bringing the Al Eilas HaTamid and its libations. Libations meaning those things that we pour, the wine that we pour on the altar. Bring that. Then Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chachim on new moon. Bring an elevation offering, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs in the first year, unblemished, etc. A whole offering there. Then we get to Shishi. We talk about Pesach Musaf, Shavuos Musaf, Rosh Hashanah Musaf, and Yom Kippur Musaf. All of those are brought. I'm not so sure about my little picture of matzah there. So bad. That's Shavuos, first fruits, Bikurim. That's what it's trying to describe, because Shavuos is the time of the Bikurim. That is not quite a shofar. I didn't quite see that, but we're not allowed to decorate our shofars per se like that, and no one has been cut off them. But so be it. And Yom Kippur, I'm not sure what that is. But it depicts things. Incense, smelling you. It's actually an interesting thing. There are many people. There is a custom for a man to have, say, 100 blessings a day. Comes from King David. On Shabbos, because we only have 7 blessings in each of our tefillahs, during the week we have 18, 19 times 3. We get to 100 pretty quickly with benching or eating and other blessings. In a day you can get to 100, no problem whatsoever. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's much harder to get to 100 because you've only got 7 blessings. And so there are people who have another little bit of food to eat just to get to that number, so you can say 2 blessings on the food. That's one of the reasons we have a Kiddush, we have 3 meals. But there are also people who will bring around things to smell, particularly on Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur,
not only Sfadim, it's a big thing in Sfadim. Yeah, but there are, and one of the reasons for that is to wake us up. But the other reason is that we're getting to our 100 blessings a day. And so there's ways of getting to that 100 blessings a day. Rabbi Victor Miller used to say, he was asked, why 100 blessings? What's this big deal? It's because if you say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you. You are the source of all blessing. King of the universe, Hashem, you are Hashem. 100 times a day, you're going to connect to Hashem. That's connection. He says, try an experiment. Victor Miller died about 30 years ago. He was a Rosh Hashiva in New York. He says, try an experiment. He says, there was some clown in New York, I assume, called Bozo. He said, walk around and say, Bozo, 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 100 times in a day. You are going to connect to Bozo. You're going to start walking around with a red nose. You will be a clown. you will start behaving and connecting to Bozo the clown because it's on your lips and in your brain 100 times a day. So if you can say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam 100 times a day, you are connecting to Hashem 100 times a day. He also used to say, he had his 10 commandments of life. And one of them was, say to Hashem every single day, say it out loud, scream to Hashem, I love you Hashem. So in his times it was easy. He says, not so hard. You walk into a phone booth, you open the door, you pick up the phone, you close the door, scream out, I love you Hashem, put the phone down and walk out. Rabbi Dumila was yeah. So he said some phenomenal things. He said things like, he was very controversial. He said it like it needed to be said. A lot of people took umbrage with some of the things he said. But he said, just look at a humble apple. Look at an apple and think, Hashem, you've given us so many varieties of apples that all taste different. They look different. Look at how it's made. It's got a soft skin on the outside that protects this beautiful flesh on the inside. It's sweet. You want a more bitter one, have a Granny Smith. You want a sweet one, have a Red Jazz, whatever it might be. But there's so many different apples. Each one is unique in its own way. And then somebody came along, it's a non-Jewish quote this, but it's brought down in a book, I can't remember the name of the book, but it's brought down in a Jewish book by Rebbitzin from Manchester. The name of the book escapes me. She was a very, very sick lady, and she wrote this book to help people who are struggling with any difficult circumstances. And she wrote in the book, let's remember this quote, any fool can count the number of seeds in an apple, but it takes a creator of a world to count the number of apples in every seed. Every seed can become a tree that's going to give off hundreds of apples. We need to know that those apples all come from Hashem. That's a message from Rabbi Victor Miller. That's our message from various other people. Pesach Kron brings those stories very, very strongly. In fact, as far as I recall, he wrote an approbation in that book. He should be well. Okay, so that was Rosh Hashanah. I'm not going to go through all of the offerings of each of Yom Tovim, but let's just jump to Shvi, and we'll talk about the Musaf offerings of Sukkot. Now, on Sukkot, it says to us, on every other day it says, on Shavuos it says, bring an elevation offering, satisfying aroma, 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs in the first year, meal offerings, etc. Comes Sukkot, and it says, on the 15th day of the 7th month, there'll be a holy convocation, no work, celebrate the festival of Hashem for 7 days, bring an elevation offering, a fire offering, satisfying aroma to Hashem. Then it says, 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs in the first year, unblemished, etc. Then comes the second day and bring 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, etc. Third day, 11. The fourth day, 10. The fifth day, and down to the 7th day, 7. So total 70 bulls. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, etc. 7. Each day brings 7. Bring a number of bulls. Those 70 bulls the rabbis bring down represent the 70 primary nations in the world. There's obviously this United Nations has got 200 and something, whatever. But what do we count as a nation? The Torah counts 70 nations. A whole lot of discussion about that. What are the 70 nations? Goes all the way back to Noah's time. But then on Shmini Atzeret it says, just bring 1 bull. And the way this is interpreted is on Shavuot, we are bringing offerings for the nations of the world on their behalf. The temple is there for the whole world. We are the people who are the guardians of Hashem's temple. We bring the offerings, but non-Jewish people can send offerings, and there's Gemara's talking about how they send offerings to the temple. But these communal offerings are brought under command of Hashem, and each day we bring a bull for each of the nations of the world. And the way Chazal describes this is, a king has a party, and he invites his entire kingdom to come to his party. And the first day he brings 13. He's got 70 groups in his kingdom. First day brings 13 of them, the second day 12, and eventually on the 7th day there's 7 left. But throughout this period, his firstborn child, his favorite child, not that we should have favorite, but his child, only child, let's put it that way, only child is there sitting and watching this whole procedure. And the king says to his only son, I want to stay back one more day. And stay with me. And we'll have a small party. We'll have one bull. We're not going to have a big fanfare. Everyone's gone home now. It's just you and me. It's the Jewish people. Shmini Atzeres is that day for us. It's not for any other reason. Therefore, that we think about it, that Simchas Torah, where we celebrate that we're finishing the Torah, is put into that day. Simchas Torah is not a biblical festival. Shmini Atzeres is, but we includes the finishing, the rejoicing of the Torah, because we've connected to Hashem. We have stayed that extra day. We've done what we wanted. The joy of Sukkot was incredible. And therefore, we have that extra day. That's the message of Shmini Atzeres. And the Parsha ends that these are the festivals that Hashem appointed, aside for all your vows and other offerings that you're going to bring, any offerings you bring, these are the offerings that you bring on your festivals. And Moshe said to the children of Israel, he did everything that Hashem commanded Moshe did. End of Parsha. Very, very briefly, this week starts the 3 weeks. 3 weeks starts on the 17th of Tammuz. It ends on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av being that very, very, very difficult day in the Jewish world. It's a day that the spies came back and brought back their negative report about the Jewish people, or about the land of Israel. They spoke Lashon Hara about the land of Israel. It's the day that the Jews were kicked out of Spain. It's the day that the 2 temples were destroyed. It's the day that the First World War started. Many, many calamities happen on that day. But it's also the day that Mashiach was certainly brought down. That's Mashiach's birthday. Brought down, Mashiach's going to come in Nisan, but he can come at any time. But the whole period started with Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, this week, Wednesday night, Thursday. As you say, Tisha B'Av fast day is a full fast. There's a whole... The mourning period of the 3 weeks is a reverse type mourning period to what a person who is in mourning for a close relative would do. Our mourning starts lightly. On the 17th of Tammuz, we have a fast day. We don't say Shechiana. We don't have new clothes. We don't listen to music. Interestingly enough, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring music there. Shulchan Aruch does not bring that you can't listen to music in the 3 weeks. Because the Shulchan Aruch says you can't listen to music ever. Because we haven't got a temple. Without a temple, how can you listen to joyous music? There's some music can. So therefore, he doesn't need to bring that. We all do listen to music, various types of music. We need to be careful what music we listen to for another time. But the source of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is a time that all the tragedies that happen, I'll just go through the 5 tragedies briefly, but those things that happened were starts of other calamities. It led to other things, other problems. And therefore we have this fast day. We start off slow. And we have these minor mourning things. We don't have haircuts. We don't buy new clothes. We don't say Shechianu. Things like that, which is things that typically a person mourning for a parent would do in the 12 months. We go backwards in the way we're working in the 3 weeks. We get to Rosh Chodesh Av, different customs as to when things happen. Things get a little bit stricter, more closely related to the 30 days, the Shloshim period. And then we get to the week of Tisha B'Av, and Tisha B'Av itself, it's like the Shiva and the funeral itself. And so it's flipped around in the opposite. But in terms of the 17th of Tammuz, what happened on this day? So, 5 tragedies. Moshe Rabbeinu is on Har Sinai for 40 days. The Jewish people miscalculate, and they believe Moshe Rabbeinu should have come down already, and he doesn't. And they go to Aaron and they say, we need an intermediary. Most of the people, vast majority of the people's motivation there was, we can't speak to Hashem directly. We died twice when Hashem was giving us the Torah. He revived us. And then Moshe was our intermediary in between. Moshe's gone. The angel of death showed them a depiction of Moshe being carried in his coffin through heaven. And they thought, oh, he's not coming back. And they miscalculated by a few hours. And Aaron pushed them off. And they created this golden calf. And a few people bowed down to the golden calf and said, this is our God. Other people were joyful and danced, but didn't necessarily bow down. But there was a plague and people died. Not a huge amount of people. But Moshe comes down and he sees what's going on and he breaks the tablet. And that's what happened on the 17th of Tammuz. 40 days after Shavuot, after we received the Torah, Moshe broke the tablets. The next tragedy brought down is that the Korban Tamid in this week's Parsha stopped. The Babylonians were progressing on attacking the southern kingdom of Yehuda. Remember, after King Solomon, the country of Israel, the whole country of Israel had now split into two kingdoms, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Yehuda. The northern kingdom had been dispersed 150 years or so before that by the Assyrians, by Sanherib and the Assyrians. And now the Babylonians have taken over as the world dominant power, and the Babylonians now are approaching Jerusalem. And on the 17th of Tammuz, it surrounded Jerusalem, and there were no more sheep available to bring the daily Korban Tamid. That is a tragedy, because we are losing that connection to Hashem. For us bringing the offerings, it's a pleasing aroma to Hashem, a reich nifleach. Hashem gets joy from that, if we can say that about Hashem, and therefore He protects us. We've lost that connection to protection. And so on that day, on the 17th of Tammuz, before the destruction of the temple, 3 weeks later, no more daily offerings. The walls of Jerusalem were breached by the Romans in the year 69 of the Common Era. And then the Romans destroyed the temple on the 9th of 69, 70, very different opinions. We say in the year 70. It's brought down that somebody called Apostomus burnt a Sefer Torah, burnt a Torah scroll. Not much is known exactly who this is. It is a bit of a debate who he is, but many people equate him with the Antiochus Epiphanes of the Hanukkah story. Time of Hanukkah, middle times of the Second Temple, so 200 odd years before the destruction, while others say that he might have been a Roman person later time. But sometime in the Second Temple time, somebody burnt a Sefer Torah on the 17th of Tammuz. There is an interpretation that says that it was Ezra, the Sefer Torah that Ezra himself wrote was the one that burnt, which was why it's such a tragedy. Sefer Torah, Chumashim, Gemorahs, etc. have been burnt through history. We know this as a continual thing that kept happening. And then the fifth one, the Gemara works out from a verse in Daniel that an idol was placed in the temple itself. And these 5 reasons are brought down that we need to have a fast. And it is, as we call it, more of a minor fast. It's a day fast. A lot easier than the 2 big fasts we have, Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, all for different reasons. But if we go back, it's all of these things were about a weakened connection to Hashem. Our connection to Hashem that we had was broken in some way. The golden calf, our connection was broken. We wanted to have an intermediary. We didn't trust in the process. We put something in place. He says, no, you've broken that connection. The daily Tamid, as I said, we broke that connection, unfortunately. The walls of Yerushalayim are breached. There's something going on. We've got to a point where we've just gone too far away from Hashem. We've stepped back too far from our connection. A Torah scroll, the tragedy of a Torah being burnt is it's beyond anything we can understand. And an idol, of all things, to put an idol in the Beis Hamikdash is just, and then, the Gemara describes, and maybe we'll discuss this in the next couple of weeks, about some of the things that happened on Tisha B'Av, which were even much worse than some of these things. And it was like horrific what happened leading up, particularly in both destructions of both temples, but particularly in the Second Temple, because it was very fresh in the memory at the time of the Gemara. What the Romans did was beyond anything that would ever be acceptable, but it was against the Jewish people, so the world would probably accept it today, the world that we're living in right now. And so we have a period of reflection. It's called, this period of 3 weeks is called Bein HaMitzarim, between the straits. Mitzrayim we were caught between the straits. We were like in a straitjacket, same kind of word, between the straits of this time period in the world where we need to break through, break open those shackles and connect to Hashem. We can connect to Hashem in this period in just a little bit of a better way. And Hashem will bring Mashiach. Mashiach's born on Tisha B'Av. He should have been born a number of years ago so that he can just reveal himself now and show us that Hashem's really there for us. It says before the times of Mashiach, things are going to get harder and harder for the Jewish people. There's many discussions in the Rishonim about it's going to look like Hashem